Hi guys, and welcome back to Podcast with Julie. Today I have a very special guest with me. His name is Alex and he is an airline pilot with Cathay Pacific Airways in Hong Kong, where he flies the Boeing 777ER. Alex has been an airline pilot for 20 years, and during his career he has worked all over the world for multiple airlines. And today we will hear all about it. So without further ado, hi Alex, and welcome to Julie's podcast.
Thank you very much, Julie. Thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here again.
Yeah, for sure, no problem. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. I'm loving the weather. I have time off just before Christmas. It's just great.
Sounds amazing. Let's go ahead and start with the questions. Could you please describe the qualifications you had to attain in order to become an airline pilot?
Well, it's not that hard a process, to be honest. I mean, obviously you have to go to school for it, and there's two steps you have to take. There's a ground school, and then there's the flight school, and those are basically cut down into different ratings. So you start with a small rating, which would be like a private pilot rating, and could be comparable to your regular Class 6 driver's license. And from then you upgrade it to a commercial rating, which is basically the same as a heavy-duty commercial truck license here in BC. So the whole process takes approximately a year from getting started with nothing till you complete all your ratings to the end, and it's called an airline transport pilot license. And from that point on, you're employable. However, that doesn't mean you can actually get a job at that point. You're fairly inexperienced, you have very little hours, and airlines don't like to hire people with very low hours. So what you do is you have to go scouring for jobs wherever you can. You go up north looking for jobs flying in the Arctic, or you go to Indonesia and fly in the bush. That's where the term bush pilot comes from. And that's actually how you build your qualifications. The ratings themselves are a qualification, but the actual qualification come with experience over years of flying around and experiencing the flight deck from the inside and flying airplanes. And that's what's the important part. So those would be actually your qualifications. And that can take anywhere from a year to 4 to 5 years, depending on how lucky you are in your career and who's willing to give you the first break in their job.
Please list a couple of tasks that your job includes apart from the obvious, which is flying the airplane.
Well, the job itself is all-encompassing. It's not just flying the airplane. There are lots of things that need to be done. For example, on a typical day, we meet up an hour before. We have to look at certain things like the weather, the fuel that we need for our routing, the weather at the destination airport. There's all these things that we take into consideration. Then obviously we have to meet our team. We have a fairly large team. We fly an airplane with 400 people on board, and we have a cabin crew complement of 18, plus there's 4 of us in the front, so that makes 22 crew members. So obviously the whole thing is a management exercise as well, where you're trying to get your team to come together to be able to serve the customer. And when we get to our destination, if we're down route, there's all the extras of having to find the transportation, taking us to the hotel. So generally speaking, the whole job is not only just flying the airplane, it is also a management exercise of trying to manage a lot of people and a lot of variables that come in from either side.
If any, what are the disadvantages of your job?
Well, see, I don't see that many disadvantages. If you ask the family, probably the biggest disadvantage would be that I spend most of my Christmas away, I spend most of my New Year's away, and a lot of family holidays, a lot of birthdays. You miss out on a lot of things. A lot of the time you can't get the leave that you want, so you get leave when the kids are not on holiday. That is obviously a big disadvantage, but then again, there are so many advantages and perks to the job that kind of overshadows the disadvantages that it might have.
From what age on did you imagine yourself in this profession?
Well, I was probably 7 or 8 years old when I first started traveling a lot with my family, and somebody took me up to the flight deck, and I was sold from that point on. That needed to be me, that was going to be me, and then I sort of dreamt and imagined it for many, many years, and then I got a little derailed at one point, and I actually went off to college to study something different and get a degree in something completely different. But I think it was always in the back of my head, and then after I graduated from college, I went and revisited it, and here I am today.
What are the benefits of your job?
Well, there's lots of benefits of my job. I mean, the obvious one is that we get something called staff travel. That means we get discounted airline tickets to travel around the world. And the good part about it, and the really cool part about it, is it's not only on our own airline, it's also on companies like Air Canada or American Airlines. So we can take full advantage of that global travel package. Other perks of the job are we get a lot of time off. Because we travel a lot, we spend a lot of time at home, a lot of downtime. On average, I would say I get about half the month off, which is like having a vacation every month, which is great.
Have you ever been rejected from a job interview before? If so, how did you feel?
Yes, I have on several occasions. Yeah, you feel pretty crappy afterwards, but as it happens, one door closes and another door opens, and I was very lucky, so I ended up actually in a company that I always wanted to work for, and here I am. Lucky me today. But yeah, if you do get rejected, obviously it's a hard call, but it happens, and it happens to everybody.
How did you get your current job?
Getting my current job at Cathay Pacific was a long-term project, basically. I always knew I wanted to work for them, as I just mentioned, and it was an ongoing thing for approximately 4 years of trying to get an interview with the company and then finally landing a job with the company. And it was a lot of phone calls, actually taking a trip out to Hong Kong and knocking on their door, physically, literally knocking on their door and begging for a job. And in the end, it paid off, and I got an interview, and I worked very hard for it. You have to do a lot of studying when you interview to become an airline pilot. It's just not like a regular interview. There's a lot of technical questions, and it's sort of like a test situation, to be honest. So there was a lot of studying involved, but in the end it paid off, and I got the job.
Just one last question before we finish off. Do you truly love your job?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much for your input and your time. Hopefully see you soon.
Well, thank you, Julie. Thank you for having me, and Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Thank you so much. Same to you.